Good afternoon. 25 years ago, I have to put this on. 25 years ago, a new Dutch telephone book was introduced. For this book, I designed it together with Kees Schelvis. Not only the book itself, but also a typeface for it. This typeface was called Telefont. I was looking for a name for this font, and I asked my father, how can I name this font? I need a name for it. And he said, Telefont. And I said, no, that's too obvious. But anyway, it was a good name, and I kept it. And it was the microtypography of the book I was responsible for, and the typeface. And we had, of course, let's say the obvious goals to make a new telephone book, to save space, to make it more readable, to get a better hierarchy, because we shouldn't forget that a telephone book is not about, it's not a book about readability or legibility. It's a book about searchability. You have to be able to find something there. So we're not talking about legibility tonight. Well, before I talk about this book, I would like to talk a little bit about the books before the 1994 book. Because it's just a history of book, which is important to know how I reacted on that, sort of. And then I want to concentrate on two books, one from before 1977 and one from after 77. If you zoom in on this, you can see that on the left book, before 77, it's a very crappy setting. It's really bad setting, really bad typesetting. It is set in Bell, not Centennial, Bell Gothic. It was sort of before Bell Centennial, let's say. It was typeset with a metal typeset, and then it was offset printed. So, but the settings were the typography was really bad, and you can see the names all in capitals. From the people have their name all in capitals. There's these little dots, etc. And then the one on the right, which is after 1977, redesign. Well, you can hardly call it a redesign, it's a new design. It looks very clean. If you look at it, it looks very, very nice and clean and with lines. And anyway, I want to concentrate on this second book. This was designed by Wim Crouwel and Jolijn van der Wouw. We all know Wim Crouwel, a modernist who founded Total Design in Amsterdam. And well, you can say a lot about these pages, but one thing you can say about this, I think, is that it's an iconic design. It's beautiful, it's simple, there's no dotted lines. It's very nice. It's a very beautiful piece of design. So there's a lot of details you can say. There's, for example, 4 columns, which is quite good because then you have more space on a page. It's a good thing. This is very nice. The numbers are before the name. Did you see that? So you don't need these dotted lines to find the number after the name. It's just in front of it. It's genius. I think it's great. But there are also a few, well, not so good micro-typographical details in it. So first of all, the numbers. These are Univers numbers. These are not the best numbers to make a telephone book, really not. So I'll come back to it later. Another thing, a low hierarchy. As I said to you, this book has to be searchable. So you have to have few points to search a thing. You first look for the city, then you look for the name, then you look for the number. So if the city name is very small, it is somehow less easy to find, because in the books you must imagine there's a lot of cities and you have to find it in a fast way. So another thing, there was no postal code. This was very weird because in 1977, I think, the postal code was introduced in Holland, and we were taught with big campaigns on television, we have the address and we must have our postal code after the address, always. But, well, it's a strange story. this was a telecommunication company for telephones. They said, we don't want to put in the postal code because we want people to phone each other, not to write each other. Otherwise, people would have buy stamps and they won't phone, so this is, it's all economic thing. No indents, there's no indents, which is for a list, for a list it's not good. You must have a sort of, you have to follow the line of the letters where you are. So one was not so right. You can see these are all red points. I thought I'd make it visual a little bit. So there's the typeface itself. It's an electronically condensed universe. It was, and it was set, I think, in a sort of cathode ray tube method, whatever, which was much better than the previous one, but still not so good. And after all, that's the main thing, in fact, which you can see. There's no capitals. It's all lowercase. Well, for a modernist like Wim Crouwel, this was sort of a good thing to have, of course. Modernists don't like capitals. But it was a technical thing. I think the system couldn't handle that much typefaces. So he chose only to use lowercase. It was for him a bonus as a modernist, but okay. In fact, this is the whole thing for which this book became criticized. It was criticized very much in the press, and the people didn't like it. Why didn't people like it? Their name was not in capitals anymore. You must imagine, there was no Facebook or no social media. The only sort of public identity people had was their name in the phone book. That was their, I'm in the phone book and I've got an address and I've got a number and that's it. Well, and they come up with a telephone book with no capitals. I'm not important anymore. And the critics were really furious. They called it a new ugliness. The new ugliness, can you imagine? The new ugliness is a bitter enemy of the capital letter, which I think is seen as elitist, authoritative, or imperialist. Yeah, a writer, a Dutch writer. Another reaction from a user. Finally, I have this utter piece of trash in my hands. Everything has been done to make it unreadable and useless as a telephone book. A sans serif typeface, bad spacing, and last but not least, no capitals. So, if you look at the work of Wim Crouwel, this is all lowercase. Beautiful, it's great, I love it. These are iconic posters, book covers, whatever. I don't miss any capitals here, not at all. It looks stunning, it's beautiful. So, but that's, Wim Crouwel was a modernist. I'm not going to talk about modernism, because I think it's the most dogmatic movement ever nowadays. So, we're not going to discuss because it will be a whole new discussion, but let's see this design. This is a modernist design, lowercase, yeah. What can you say? It was disapproved, one moment. They said, we don't want it anymore. You have to go back. You have to do it again. So, in the meantime, Wim Crouwel was getting older and Jolijn van der Wouw took over, but they were still both involved. And they came up with this. It is the redesign, 1983 redesign of the telephone book. Well, I can spend another hour talking about the details, but there were a few very good things here. There were the custom designed numbers. They were designed by Gerard Unger and Chris Vermaas. Great, much better numbers than the Univers, of course. The large point size was better. But there were a lot of other things. It was a 3-column system suddenly, not 4 anymore. So, well, saving space, forget about it. The number was after the name now, because they had criticized the names before the number somehow. There is still the low hierarchy, there is still the no postal code, no indents, the Univers as an unsuitable typeface. And still, the name and address in all lowercase. That's where it started with, the critics. Still, they did it. So, this thing is for me the most interesting part, the custom designed numbers by Gerard Unger. He was asked it was in 1984, to design these numbers to be fit with the Univers. Well, and they did a great job, of course, and they called the typeface 1984. It's a nice name for a typeface. It's only in 10 numbers, of course, but in the bold and in the regular. But you can see in the below line, this is the new, let's say, numbers, and above is the Univers, which is more closed. So we all know these stories of two closed letters, etc. So this was a very positive thing in this book. But if you compare the 1977 design of Crouwel with the 1983 redesign of Crouwel, or van der Wouw, yeah, it has not been much better. I mean, there's only 2 points. Okay, the 4 columns has changed to 3 columns, which is not better, and the number before the name became after. But only the numbers is much better, an improvement, and the larger point size is an improvement. So why do you need a redesign like this? I don't know. When they commissioned me to make a new telephone book, I was thinking, yeah, where do I start? I'm going to make a new typeface for it, and I have to make a new microtypography for the columns. Where do I start? Because I don't have a typeface to make the microtypography, and I don't know yet the microtypography to make the suitable typeface. This is a sort of very strange. It's an ideal situation for a designer to make the whole thing. But still, you have to start somewhere. So I started with a typeface, of course. I'm a type designer primarily. But in fact, at the same time, I started with sketching, very rough sketches, very stupid sketches. But I was sort of, I need some material. I need a font to work with, to determine the thickness, for example, the weight of the letter. So, well, I put in this slide to make you awake, because variable fonts is very... so I used multiple master fonts. A lot of you know about this. Actually, I took Myriad, and this Myriad, you can, with multiple master fonts, you can generate all sorts of weights and widths and everything in a variable way. Only you make fixed fonts. I made 2 fixed fonts with, I don't know, it was the width was 350, 450 wide, and here another one. I made a lot of them, and I compared them, and I choose these 2 to have the bold for the name and the regular for the address. So I started doing the layout, the microtypography, using this typeface, just to have something. So I could later make the typeface according to these things. So the customized typeface, Telefont, we had some features, of course, we desired. Like any new type design project, you need new features. These are all the features we wanted. It should be narrow, it should be large X height, short ascenders, descenders, large, small capitals, high contrast, open numbers, all the things which were done wrong in the previous books, we try to, of course, put in this font. Yeah, so I just started sketching on basis of the weights I had made with the multiple master fonts. This is just sketches. At the same time, these were the artwork for Icarus system to digitize the whole thing. But this is just sketches for the name. This is a sketch for the address. But of course, you cannot see much with an outline like this. You need some sort of black thing. So I just made, and I must say, this project had to be done in 3 months because they needed a sort of presentation, and the big guys with what do you call this? Ties, yeah. They were there waiting. Okay, so I had very little time. So I made a copy of this sheet, and I just filled it in with black marker, just like you do. Yeah, like this. This is just a copy. I cut the letters loose, and I started setting text with it, like you do with metal type, for example. This I copied again and reduced. So I had some sort of impression of how it would work. When I was happy with it, I made corrections, and I made another correction. When I was happy, I made the artwork, really final artwork. I marked the artwork. These little lines are all marks to put in the Icarus system. A far better system than we have now, I must say. But anyway, I started digitizing. I didn't have much time, so my good friend Fred Smyers helped me out a lot. Without him, I couldn't have done it. We worked day and night, 24 hours, and it was a very exciting project, but Fred helped me a lot with it. It was real important. This became Telefont list. There was another version for the texts, but I'm not going to talk about it now because I only have 15 minutes, I think. This became Telefont list. Just a very simple typeface, a regular, a bold, an italic. And it's a typeface where there is no much possibilities, because if you want to set a telephone book, you're not going to sit in InDesign and page by page design it. It's of course an industrial process. It's a sort of generated list of names which should be okay. So there's no ligatures, there's no kerning, there's no small capitals or whatever. It's just a very simple font. Well, the microtypography for the book is something else, of course. I showed you already all these details in the other books from Crouwel, and well, this was sort of first trial. It was, I don't know when it was, but you can see I was very charmed by the fact that the numbers were in front of the name. So this was our proposition. With all these things, which I just showed in the other book, they're now all green, by the way, because I wanted to make it better, of course. But there's a lot of things. There's a name before the number, the hierarchy is higher, there's the postal code, indents, a large point size, name and address with capitals, telephone, 3-column system. That was the demand of the telephone company, and I didn't like it, but I had to do it. It was sort of the only thing I didn't like. But then they said, no, we also don't want the numbers before the name. Okay, I was a bit disappointed, but it was disapproved. So I had to back to the drawing table, and we came up with this. Now the numbers are behind the names, but all the other things are somehow there. Okay, only the name, number after name has. So it was still for me like a good thing to do. And this became the new Dutch telephone book in 1994. With a cover from another company, another design bureau, but this was the thing. It gained a lot of, let's say, attention because it's a national thing. A new telephone book is a national thing somehow. So it was written in the papers. There was on television. There were films, etc. So I want you to show this little film about the printing process. This is from a program called Kunstmest, and it was just an item about how the book was made. It's just a clip of 2 minutes or so. I hope there is sound. Louder, much louder, much louder, much louder, much louder.
Letters zijn net schoenen. Ze worden al eeuwenlang gebruikt, blijven in principe hetzelfde, maar toch worden er steeds nieuwe ontworpen. Dat zegt Martin Majoor. Hij is typograaf en letterontwerper. En het gaat goed met zijn letters. Voor de een kreeg hij onlangs een prijs en de tweede heeft hij gemaakt voor het nieuwe telefoonboek wat vanaf vandaag overal verspreid wordt.
Okay, yeah, for the non-Dutch speaker, non-Dutch people, she basically says how fantastic I was, and so this printing process. These are the sheets that come out. These huge folio things, and this is the size of the telephone book, and this is the sheet. The how you call this? Katern.
Signature.
Yeah. Okay. We were very lucky, I was very lucky, that because I said, I would like to test this typeface on the press, because it's very important. And they said, okay, come up with a few sheets, like 5 or 6 or 7, in 2 days. I said, what, in 2 days? Yes, in 2 days. I had to make sort of test sheets. Again, Fred Smyers helped me out tremendously. We worked on this day and night. We made different versions. We had spikes and ink traps, whatever. So there were a lot of tests we made with type hinting, with open characters. How does the open characters keep up? You can zoom in and you can compare with let's say the Univers with the Telefont. And if you go closer, you can actually see that things like this are really bad. Although I don't know if there will be $ in the telephone directory, but anyway, it's not really open typeface is better, of course. That's obvious. We know this in the meantime. Spikes and ink traps. We made one version without, one with a lot, and also tested this. And these are some microscopic or whatever. And you can see the left was no spikes and ink traps, and on the right there were spikes and ink traps. It's much sharper, it's much better. But we got a new printing press, they said, and the quality will be better. So in the end I thought there's no time enough for this, and besides the press will get a better quality. So if it's getting a very good quality, we will see suddenly all these things on the letters, and I don't want that. So we just didn't put it in. Yeah, and then a few years later, they finally asked me to make a 4-column system because they wanted to save space, obviously. So I made this, and I saved a whopping 20%. And this goes, it's about millions. It's about millions of euros because every year, about 30 million books are being printed. So if they save 20% on all these costs, you can imagine how much it was, and how you can also imagine how I regret that I didn't ask 1% of this. So that became the Dutch telephone book in 4 columns. That's sort of almost the ideal situation for me. The only thing, number after the names was still there, but okay, I could accept it. Yeah, you can of course compare the Crouwel design with my design. I'd always love to do this, of course, because I love green. But of course, on the other hand, why should you compare? This is the Crouwel design, the iconic design, and this is my design. So indeed, what I can say about these two things, this is iconic. This is iconic. It's beautiful, it's simple, it's clear, but this is information design, I think. So that's the difference between, let's say, graphic design and information design. There is a difference there. Yeah, well, this is a pile of books. The last book is on top because this year actually I got the message that the book will be stopped printing. They're not producing it anymore. It's too costly, so they stopped this. But the whole thing is that my typeface, which I specially made for this book, is in there, and all the rights are with the telecommunications company. I don't own it anymore, so somehow I feel that my typeface is not anymore. It's 25 years, and so yeah, it's a sad story, in fact. It is the end, and can a typeface die? That's a sort of open question too. Can a typeface die? So this is the end of my story, and the end of the telephone book, the end of an era, and I want to thank you very much. I need this.